Hello everyone and welcome to the Plumbers of Data Science podcast, where I talk about data engineering, the basically plumbing of data science. Today I have a few topics I'd like to talk about. One is data APIs. So how can you communicate with a platform? And another one that fits to that is JSON, JavaScript object notation. Okay. So let's start. So APIs are a huge part of a platform, and it's a big part of the functionality that you as a user usually don't see. Application programming interfaces are in the background, but they offer the main functionality to you as a developer, to your apps, without the use of a user interface. So when you look at Twitter, for instance, you can send a tweet by going onto your Twitter account and you log in, and then you send the tweet over the web interface. Done. This is very simple, and there is no use of an API. Then you have, for instance, your app on your iPhone or your Android device. You go in, you log in, you send a tweet, done. For you, there is no API involved here, but what actually happens is that there is an API working behind the app on the Twitter platform that lets the app execute statements, execute functionality. For instance, the log on system. You log on, you send your user information, you send a tweet, and in the background it's an API that is working there, getting you the tweets that you see on the user interface, sending your tweets, let you send direct messages, and so on. You don't see that because the app for Twitter, for instance, is from Twitter, so it's not that you're actually using or interacting with the API. Now, in a different scenario, let's say you build your own app and you want to add Twitter functionality, or you have a device, a machine device, and you want to send tweets directly from the machine. Let's say from your car should Twitter when something is wrong, when the battery charge is low or whatever. Then you interact with the APIs. You can program on top of the APIs. You can, for instance, register your app with Twitter. This is how this works. You register your app with Twitter, and then you get a authentication key via OAuth. This is an authentication system with a key. This OAuth is a unique key that then gets basically connected with your app and lets you communicate with the API as your identity. And then you can use the API to query users. You can use the API to send tweets from your app natively without going to another app. And so APIs are very important, not only for Twitter, for basically every platform, because nowadays most of the interactions are not done by by a user. Twitter is a social media platform, so it's for the people, basically done for the people. But when you think about the Internet of Things and IoT applications, on the other side, on one side is the platform, and on the other side is an application, is a machine, is a piece of software. And that piece of software has no use for a user interface. And so it needs to use an API. It needs to use an API to send to actually authenticate you, or authenticate itself with the platform. And it needs a way to send data to you and also receive data from you, from the platform. And without that functionality, it's very hard to do new things. You can, because only with a user interface, it's basically useless. And so most of the development or a lot of development is actually done then in the background for the APIs. So in Twitter's case, so that you can offer good APIs to developers, and those developers then program on top of your APIs and use your platform. And the better the APIs the easier is it to basically make business as a third party with that platform. So let's say you are offering a AI service that does anomaly detection. You need good APIs. So for companies that are in the Internet of Things or whatever, that they very easily and very clearly can program against your API and use your platform to gain insight and to make a business out of your service. And so of course those APIs need to be made in a way that you scale very good. If you're on a cloud platform, for instance, you have a load balancing in front of it, and you have auto scaling groups where let's say you have a REST interface on top of a web server. That this web server then this is a very traditional approach. You have that web server, and that one is in an auto scaling group. So the more API calls are made, and when things like the CPU load on that server are above a threshold, the platform like AWS triggers a auto scaling and then basically spins up new instances of that server, and through the load balancer then feeds the data into those new instances. So APIs are a crucial part of the system, mostly overlooked by the user, but for the developer very, very important. And also the improvements of APIs are super important. You start with a basic functionality, and then you add more functionality over time. One thing that is a bit you need to be look out for, the problem is if you change APIs. So you have version 1 and then version 2, and the version 2 is not downwards compatible with version 1, and at some point you discontinue version 1, so it's no longer working. So every developer that has built on version 1 then gets cut off of the system. And this is naturally, it's not always, you cannot always make sure that this doesn't happen. but this is something to keep in mind. So the initial API design needs to be quite good. So you need to have that down correctly. Regarding JSON, why is JSON so important here? For instance, with Twitter, the upside with JSON is that when you have a REST API, that you can easily structure those calls. You can structure the calls and make it for the server and the client very easy to use the API. The upside of JSON APIs is they are readable to the human, so it's very easy to debug if you have a call that doesn't work. You usually get an info from the server what doesn't work, and then like with tools like Notepad++ and a fitting plugin, you can easily put that JSON string in there, have it formatted in a very simply readable way, and then look at it. Or there are online services or online tools that for free you can paste in your JSON string and then have it formatted into a good readable format for a human, and you analyze it. Most of them tell you also if something isn't right for the setup, that where the problem lies, then in which line, or where is the issue here. What a big use case for JSON outside of APIs is in the big data environment for logging. So server logs, application logs, if you put them in a JSON format, it has a huge upside and a bit of a downside, which is not really, the downside is not so important for big data systems, because the downside with JSON is that you have a certain overhead in the transmission, in the information, because the objects are escaped or are marked through brackets and so on, and so you have that as a additional character always, or have multiple additional characters who increase the length of the JSON. But let's say you paste the JSON into a file in HDFS, or you post it into a Kafka server, the log instance, so you have an error, it gets posted into a warning or whatever, posted into a Kafka, that then it moves down the line through Spark and into a HDFS file where you just append the log messages, the log events, and what you then can do is you analyze it. And the upside with JSON is that if you want to access the information, there are a lot of deserializers, a lot of tools available, for instance in Java or in Python. Like in Java it's JSON, where you can automatically deserialize a JSON string into Java objects, and you can work with that very easily. And same is in Spark, that you can very easily work with these objects. One thing that is very good is that when you have a HDFS file, now we're getting more in the big data stuff. If you have a HDFS file full of JSON strings with the same format, because it's all a log file, what you can do is you can use Hive, because in Hive you can define, you can make you can basically format the file into a database table. So you can make SQL-like queries to that HDFS file, and you can access it in a SQL manner. So it's basically a file with JSON strings, and from a software like Tableau who is using Hive, you can access it with a SQL query. And so JSON is very, very powerful to use. And so APIs use it a lot, because it's easy to use and very understandable and versatile. And also in the big data world, in the logging world, it's very, very much used. Yeah, let me just check if there is another point here I wanted to make. No, okay. Okay, that's already it. I hope this information helps you when you think about creating a platform or a service. Try to make a business, try to build an app. APIs, use the APIs, work with the APIs. Go to, for instance, one thing, I totally forgot, one thing that is super important, and some platforms are doing this very well, like Twitter, is the documentation for the APIs. Some platforms have super crazy good documentation for the APIs, and that's also one point that makes it very, very easy as a developer to use the API. Is a good documentation. Yeah, so, and I hope it helps you to look into JSON for getting new ideas how to do the logging and do analytics of log files and data. And yeah, check it out. It's easy to test, and it's easy to work with. Yeah, I personally like JSON very much. All right, so that's it for today. We'll meet tomorrow.